the area that they said, here's the ark, he's in this area, and you're dead wrong. And then 30 days later, 60 days later, you said, okay, we were wrong. He wasn't in the river. It wasn't an accident in the river, which we've been trying to tell you for 6 years. And now all of a sudden we're saying, okay, we were wrong, but believe us on this part. No.
Hi, everybody. Welcome back to True Crime Unsolved. I'm Myles. I'm here as always with my buddy Sean Cahill. This is the place where we tackle the stories that the TV networks won't touch. Unsolved homicides, missing persons cases, stories without an ending. Guys, today we've got a very special update video. Sean, why don't you tell everybody what we've got going on?
Absolutely. So, it shouldn't be a secret to those of you who follow the channel. We've been talking about it on our social media and we put up some shorts about this, but we are talking with Ryan Couch today, who has been working with Chance Englebert's family, trying to find out what happened to him. And this goes back for a while. He was actually one of the first episodes we put out on this channel was an interview with him before Chance was found. And now that Chance's remains have been located and positively identified, we wanted to talk to him again to find out where the family's at with this, where his job as somebody investigating this situation is. And he had quite a lot to say. I think it's fair to say that this case is anything but open and shut, and Ryan will tell us exactly why. So we had a long talk with him. And if you are someone who cares about Chance or you've been following this story, this is an absolute must watch. We learned things we had never heard before during this conversation, right, Myles?
Absolutely. Yeah, I would say this is essential viewing for anyone who cares about Chance, has been following the case, wants to know what's going on with the family, wants to know what the next steps might be. You've got to watch this thing, and I would really recommend that you watch it all the way to the end because not only does Ryan give us a very impassioned update on his own personal feelings about what happened, and you guys might have watched some of the shorts that we've been putting up over the last couple of days and gotten a hint of that. But he also tells us what Dawn's side of the family may be planning to do moving forward. And I would stick around just so you get that information.
We've had some people in the comments, very few actually. Most people think that there's more to the story here than what's been officially announced. But there are some people who kind of feel like, oh, this is open and shut. Move on from Chance Englebert. They found him. It's done. Watch this before you come to that conclusion. If that's still your conclusion, you're well within your rights. We all don't have to agree on everything, but I think Ryan lays out a really good case for why there needs to be some more answers before we're willing to say goodbye to this case.
Without further ado, let's get into it. This is Ryan Couch. He's been working with Chance Englebert's family for quite a long time on this case, and he's got some updates for us. All right, Ryan, thank you so much for jumping on with us. Obviously, there's a lot to talk about, a lot of stuff that's happened since the last time that we spoke on camera with you. We have had some conversations over email over the last few months, but why don't you guys just let's just get the audience up to speed on what's going on.
Yeah, absolutely. As everybody's aware, uh, remains were found over in the Scottsbluff National Monument area a month and a half, 2 months ago. And immediately they let Chance's wife know about it. And then they also let Chance's parents know about it, Dawn and Everett, saying that it's more than likely going to be Chance. Of course, Dawn, out of respect for law enforcement and family, including Chance's wife at the time, said out of respect for them, let's not go public and let's not talk about it until we get confirmation. Confirmation did come. The law enforcement did the right thing and sent the remains to forensics lab. In fact, I looked them up. They're one of the best forensics lab out there, and came back with dental records and I believe DNA. I haven't dove into the forensics exam because it's not available, but I believe there was absolute confirmation that it is Chance, and his remains are now with his wife.
Wow. Now, what I read from the official statements, they did say that they did DNA testing, but obviously, like you said, the test results themselves aren't available.
Yes.
Can you talk about what was found? Because initially there were some personal items that were found with the remains that were, I believe, shown to Bailey to identify before the testing was done on the remains themselves. Okay, now, I haven't seen anything official. There's been a lot of speculation online on what those items were. Can you talk at all about that now?
Oh yes, absolutely. And the reason I'm talking to you all now is in the press release that law enforcement and the county attorneys or the hired county attorneys to represent the county and the Garion Police Department put out there is they came to a conclusion, their conclusion of what happened to Chance. So as far as I'm concerned, with that conclusion, on their end, case closed. So we're going to talk about it. We gave law enforcement the respect and the distance and the time that they needed to come to a conclusion. Whether we agreed with it or not, we owed them that to try to come up to that conclusion. But now that they've finished their investigation, we're going to talk about it. So going back to what was found, articles of clothing that was found with Chance, or with the remains, his wedding band that was still there, everything that was still there, compared to other people that may have gone missing in the area, it was pretty much 99% positive it was going to be Chance. A lot of people do not know this. They didn't come out and volunteer it in a statement, but his cell phone or a cell phone was found in the vicinity. I don't know if the cell phone was identified as being his or not, but a cell phone was found. More than likely, it was his cell phone. And Chance was discovered. Chance was discovered face down and partially buried. Now, there's a lot of misconception about being partially buried. When a lot of people hear partially buried, they automatically think somebody buried him. We don't know if this is the case or not, whether environment can partially bury somebody. Even the environment or the weather that night can partially bury somebody. First time I found somebody partially buried was I was 10 years old and riding my quad out in the middle of a gully. The rain and the flash flood partially buried the person. So everything, everything underneath Chance, his clothing, his shirt, pants, everything was pretty much preserved. Being down in the earth like that, preserved, and then everything on top of him was not preserved. It was rotten, decayed due to the sunlight and the environment. And I believe one shoe was in pretty good shape, and the other shoe was just couldn't even recognize it. You wouldn't even be able to tell what type of shoe it was. So, with that type of clothing, they were able to identify him and know that it was going to be him. But I do want to talk about is what was not found with Chance. So Chance had his prize belt buckle that he cherished and his family cherished. Everybody loved this belt buckle. It was a great accomplishment for him regarding his bareback rodeo. That belt buckle was not found, and his wallet was not found. So to me, that raises some red flags there. Him not having his belt buckle and him not having his wallet is of concern to me. Number one, how does a wallet go missing? Yeah, you can drop it. Should be in the local area, should be in his vicinity, especially if his cell phone was found. And then his belt buckle. Why was his belt buckle missing? Was there anything there that ripped it off? Did somebody take it off? Did he take it off? That doesn't make much sense.
I got a small
And I
question
don't believe
about that, Ryan. Was his belt
okay,
there and just the buckle missing? Do we know that level of detail, or was the entire thing gone?
his belt was there and the buckle was missing.
Yeah.
I don't,
Okay.
by speaking with uh Dawn, I'm not sure if the belt was ripped or destroyed in that area. I'm not sure about that.
That is very strange. And any more details about the phone? Like what kind of shape it was in? Was it, I mean, obviously it's not working after all these years, but any more details about that? Because that's pretty big news. There's been so much speculation about the phone and that, the other members of his family had the phone or he had left it at the house, and to find out that they actually found it after all these years, and it, I know you said it's not 100% confirmed it was his, but that does seem very, very, very important.
It is my understanding that they are still trying to jump into the cell phone, and they're trying to learn as much as they can from it because of the decay and the damage to the phone, especially after 6.5 years. We don't know how much they're going to be able to pull from the phone. But I can tell you there's going to be some valuable information pulled from that phone, especially if it was tracking, and hopefully it was communicating one way or another with a cell phone tower in that area.
Anyone who might be just tuning in for the first time here, right? What's sort of up for dispute is not really the remains were Chance at this point. Like you said at the beginning, that's pretty much conclusive. But I think what we're all still wondering is why there? And was it something that he did himself, or is there more to the story, right? Like that's basically what we're circling around and trying to figure out with this conversation.
Absolutely. I think that's the big question is why why was he there? Why that particular area? Why off the road? And why at the bottom of a steep ravine? Um, yes, we haven't talked about his injuries that were discovered during the forensic exam, but with his injuries, and the press release coming out saying that it was part of a trauma from a fall or a quick fall or a quick stop because of the fall. Why was he there? Never once did he indicate that he was going to go mountain climbing in a rainstorm in the middle of July in the middle of the night. There's no text message, there's no phone call. Everything that we had from him was, I'm going home to Torrington. I'm walking home. I don't want to be here anymore. I'm going home. Whether he decided to go back and get lost, we don't know. But there's no indication. If you talk with his friends and his family, Chance was not a mountain climber. Chance stayed on the roads. Yes, he was tough kid. I mean, anybody that can get on the back of a bareback horse and ride that horse till conclusion and work on a ranch he was working that ranch from the minute he could stand up and walk. And then we're led to believe that this guy who could probably survive weeks on end in the wilderness without water and food, all of a sudden decided to go mountain climbing in a rainstorm and then fall down a cliff. I'm not buying it.
But like that is the conclusion of law enforcement, right? Like that's basically what they're saying they believe happened, is he made that decision, and that's what we have here.
Yes. So their conclusion is they've identified the route. They haven't come out and talked to the public about where the route is that they believe he took, but they have identified a route, and they're saying it's an accident. He went off road, tripped and fell, and had an accident, and that's where he was found.
You've studied all the video that's out there of him walking, everything that's known. You've spoken to people that saw him along the way that night. Can you give us any idea? And we can always like pop up a map of the area, but from where we see Chance walking and checking his phone, and where we know he was for sure, and trying to like just let for argument's sake, okay, if he was going to try to get home, where is the monument in relation to that where his body was found? Like, does it make any sense that he would have actually gone in that direction? According to, if we're looking at what law enforcement is saying, okay, let's look at this and, see what they're trying to tell us here.
No, that the path that he was found on, the direction that he was on, is not even a shortcut to Torrington. If you obviously, yes, on video we saw him on looking at his phone, stopping and making a sharp turn. So he was looking at something that was guiding him to where he knew where to go. He's never entered, as far as speaking with friends and family, he's never entered that area or drove to that area through there. In fact, you can't take a car in that area. Never any indication that he's ever been hiking in that area. No indication of him ever being there. So he's somewhat familiar with the Gering, Scottsbluff area. He has a route that he takes in and out of that town and that county when he comes from South Dakota. That's not where he would want to go. That's not where he would want to be. He was there, in my educated opinion, based on the totality of all the evidence and the interviews and speaking with people and looking at things, watching the videos, he was there because something had him go there. Something either forced him in that area. I don't think he willingly said, hey, I'm going to take a shortcut through Scottsbluff National Park to get to Torrington. Reason is he was looking for a ride. He was communicating with people, calling people. He made 2 phone calls, one to his best friend and then one to the person that was there that night with his best friend, and said, I need a ride. You can't go out into a abandoned national park area or a national park area that doesn't have anybody in a rainstorm and find a ride that way. Chance is not. Chance is very intelligent. Chance knows what he's doing. He does have survival instincts, and he's going to be in an area where he can get a ride, where somebody will see him. So if he's in that area, he did not want to be seen. He didn't want to be picked up at the time if he willingly walked that way or ran that way. So it comes back to, a lot of people ask me my opinion. I think he was trying to get away from something, and law enforcement, they don't address that in their final press release. They don't address why he was in that area. Maybe, I don't know, maybe they're of the opinion that Chance all of a sudden thought hiking through a national park on a trail with no cars and no vehicles through a couple gates and fences was the best route to Torrington. I'm not buying it. And man, I know this is harsh and it's going to come back harsh on law enforcement, but kind of shame on them for trying to justify that. That's horrible. Horrible. I couldn't imagine giving a press release, and I've given a few. I couldn't imagine trying to justify that's the route he would take to Torrington, or he just decided to go mountain climbing in the middle of the night in a rainstorm. I'm sorry.
Well, it seems like the problem is there is no justification. They're just like, that's what happened, and then there's no reasoning behind it. Like, I think what our viewers at least have expressed, and what I think Myles and I kind of feel too, to be perfectly frank about it, is if there's a reason that they believe Chance did that, all they have to do is kind of show us and tell us, but we're not hearing that. We just have the conclusion, right? This is the conclusion. We're not telling you why. The only thing we're left with is, okay, because he was found there. But everything you just laid out explains why there are so many questions about why he would be found there. And I feel like that's what the family deserves to know, because they know Chance better than anybody. And like you just laid out, he probably wouldn't have done that unless there was something else happening that certainly deserves answering for.
Dawn mentioned in actually one of the phone interviews that she did, I think it was with the Cowboys State Daily, maybe last week or the week before, but she mentioned that the authorities had originally said that they had evidence that he was actually working on finding his way back to his in-laws' house, and that they had evidence. I don't know if that was interviews that they conducted with people based on video evidence that they had collected, but that there was stuff out there that they were looking at that pointed towards that. And now the remains were found in the place, and that kind of thrown out. It seems like, and now they've decided, well, no, actually he was going, this way, and that was the decision he made. Do you know anything about what she was talking about, like what that evidence may have been that they were looking at that was pointing towards him heading back to his in-laws?
I'm not positive what law enforcement may have that indicated he was heading back to his in-laws. What we have and what I presented to Chance's parents is the interview with the clerk that worked at Big Bats over in the Scottsbluff area, where the clerks stated that he met Chance that night. He believed that person to be Chance, and that the person said that I had a heated argument, or I had an argument with my wife, but I'm cooled off now and I'm heading back. I wish we had video. I wish somebody had collected video from when Chance went missing from there, so that we can tell if who the clerk saw that night was Chance. There's I have no reason to doubt that the clerk saw somebody that night in that rainstorm. But it would be nice to know if it was Chance, with his memory and what he recalls happened that night. However, based on the direction he was taken to Torrington, if he was back in that area, then yes, he would be heading back to the grandparents' house to reconnect with his son or his wife, or possibly get a ride home. Hey, I'm not going to find a ride home tonight, so this is my best ride. And his ride was his own vehicle. That's the indication that we have that he was heading back to his grandparents' house.
Right. And just to reiterate,
in the direction of travel.
Thank you. Just to reiterate for folks who maybe don't know all the facts or haven't watched the long interview that we did with you, It's that same person who was the clerk at the store who said that Chance didn't seem drunk and that he actually bought energy drink and tobacco, right? And that because a lot of people online who are speculating that he was drunk and that's how he ended up out there. And like this is a tragedy, but there I think we had a viewer actually said he was cowboy drunk was the phrase that was used, and we've been trying to as much as we can get the info out there that you've gathered that if from eyewitness testimony, it seems like Chance was actually sobering up and was not continuing the party, so to speak, on his journey there.
That amount of time that's passed and that amount of exercise, and by exercise, I mean walking that area, and with the heat out that day, Chance to get from where he was dropped off to either Big Bats or what I call the area of incident over there by Stablecloud Road and Five Rocks Road, in order to get there, you're gonna be sobered up pretty well. I do have the call for services that night regarding all the law enforcement in that area and the fire responses in that area. There was no call for service for somebody staggering down the road. There was no call for service of a heavily intoxicated person in the store. So I'm not saying the lack of evidence can be used as evidence, but there was no indication that he was stone cold drunk and intoxicated by the time he got to that area. If he was able to map out his phone, if he was able to follow directions on his phone, and we're watching him walk, he knew where he was going. He was on a mission and he was going where he was going. Somebody who's extremely intoxicated, they don't know where they're going. I mean, we've all been there. Let's not be naive about it, right? So if he's getting to where he's trying to go, he's got some level-headedness about him to where he can get there. With that said, about the time his phone suffered this catastrophic failure after 9 o'clock at night, I'm seeing a guy who might have some alcohol in his system, but he has his wits about him and he knows what he's doing. Again, you'd have to be not only extremely intoxicated, but you'd have to be on a mission to go mountain climbing in the middle of the night. And I know I keep harping on that, and it sounds like I'm just trying to make a joke out of it, but I'm not. I feel like
That's how absurd it is.
yeah, I feel like the people that are justifying mountain climbing in the middle of the night, they're making a joke about it, and I'm really upset about it. I've tried to keep my emotions out of this and just try to help find Chance, but a lot of people are insulted when your final sentence is, "Hey, it was an accident." Nothing to prove that it wasn't an accident. Yeah, he's got a bunch of broken bones and trauma to himself, and his buckle's missing and his wallet's missing, but it was, hey, everybody, it was an accident. I'm not trying to bring other national news into this and other national politics into this, but somebody was just captured from 5 years ago that planted some bombs near Republican and Democratic areas in Washington, D.C. area. We have more information in the last 48 hours of who that person is and why they were there and what they were doing than we have about Chance and the conclusion of him falling over the last 6.5 years. And they've had more time to prepare for this. They've had more time. They had almost 2 months to come up with a conclusion and a way to explain it to the public. And it appears to me that their lack of accountability to the public, and they may think to themselves, we don't owe the public anything. We don't owe them explanation.
Yeah.
I hate to break it to you. You're a public servant. You do.
Yeah, that's not the job. I was going to say, and Myles and I have talked about it as we've had, updates on this story, but, the public actually pays your salary, and some of you are elected by the public. And so when you have a public interest like this and people are concerned, it's really your job actually to let people know what's going on. And at the very least, not to beat a dead horse, because again, we've talked about this, but putting out a written statement and having nobody come out and answer questions from the press, right?
Yeah,
it's crazy.
That's what I was about to say, and also just the timeline, right? Like from the time that the remains were found, I understand taking the time to identify it. I think that's totally normal and professional, and bringing in the best people possible and taking every even though you're like pretty sure it's him, let's take that time. But then as soon as the remains are identified, all of a sudden, okay, and that means that this is what happened. It's just like the easiest answer. Like he walked there and fell off a cliff, and all the other stuff that we've been looking at for 6 years is out the window, and we're just going to put out this weird page and a half online, and no one's going to face a camera, no one's going to come out publicly and speak. It doesn't garner confidence from so many people. And Ryan, I can't tell you, I'm sure you're talking to people too. How many people from the area have reached out to us, just these two guys on YouTube and are just leaving us comments, and they're like, this just doesn't, it doesn't make sense. People who are very, very familiar with that terrain, who are very, very familiar with, like we're talking about, like the location of the monument compared to the town and all of that. And they're not buying it. Yeah, and I'd say the ratio is very, very strongly against believing what the official story is now.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, I absolutely agree. I've always said in the past, people have asked me, has Garing PD ever told you anything? Garing PD doesn't owe me anything. They don't owe me an explanation. I went down and I sat down with them. My partners and I, we sat down with them for an hour and we presented to them some evidence that we had. They don't owe me anything. Law enforcement's a sponge. They soak everything up, and the only time they wring anything out is when at the conclusion of an investigation. But with that said, when you have investigators that have dedicated a lot of time, money, and effort into an investigation, and you are presented with that investigation, you do owe some respect to follow up with that investigation. So when I have witnesses that have come forward with phone numbers, addresses, full names, and what they witnessed that night, and then I find out a year later you never even once picked up the phone and called those people to confirm what they saw or did that night, don't come to me and tell me you did a thorough investigation. Save that for the rookies. Because here's why. When I did investigations and I turned in a report and I submitted it to the county prosecutor or the state prosecutor, and they said, hey, here's a witness. Did you follow up with them? And I said, no. Woo, that might be the last. My desk would probably be cleaned out by the time I got back to my office. And I know that sounds harsh, but it is harsh. When somebody presents to you eyewitnesses of something big that happened that night, right? You don't owe me. You don't need to call me up. You don't owe me, hey, we talked to these witnesses and they're full of crap, or we talked to these witnesses and there's something there. Or know that we've already looked into this. We've already investigated this. You're bringing us old information that we already knew, and sit there and let us continue to investigate our time and effort on this and snicker in the background and say, gosh, dang, they're still working on this. And we knew it was bullcrap a long time ago. Shame on you. Shame on you and who you think you're accountable to. And I know I'm being dramatic right now about it, and I'm letting my emotions out there. But I'm going to tell you right now, when you're wrong, and then 2 months later you come out and say, now we're right. No. And here's why I'm saying you were wrong. The area they were searching, the area they were at, the area that they said, here's the ark, he's in this area, and you're dead wrong. And then 30 days later, 60 days later, you said, okay, we were wrong. He wasn't in the river. It wasn't an accident in the river, which we've been trying to tell you for 6 years. And now all of a sudden we're saying, okay, we were wrong, but believe us on this part. No.
Yeah.
Heck no. I'm gonna put it out there right now. I was wrong. I myself was wrong. I identified an area of incident. Whether something happened in that area or not, we'll never know. Well, we do know something happened that night. We have multiple witnesses who are unrelated to each other, who have never spoken to each other, who identified two girls on a hill running around in the weather, being picked up by a truck and a trailer. Something happened that night with those two females and that person driving that truck. So I identified that area as an area of incident. I always thought Chance is going to be in that area. He's going to be within a half mile of that area. And I always thought it was going to be to the west and along the river or at the banks of the river. I was wrong. He was not there. Whether he was there at one time or not, I don't know. But you have to humble yourself. You have to say I was wrong. And this is why we're right now. This is why we're correct. So again, nobody did themselves any favors with this press release and not explaining why they were in the wrong. And nothing, one of the things that can really upset me is putting out a misleading press release. When you keep, when somebody keeps repeating the statement, we did lie detector tests, we did this, we did that, that is misleading. That is making people think that a bunch of lie detector tests were done with key players involved in the disappearance of Chance Englebert. When I find out, and the family finds out, and the public finds out that you did a lie detector test on an ex-wife who was pissed off at her ex-husband and told police that he had something to do with Chance Englebert, and it comes to find out that he passed with flying colors because he had nothing to do with Chance Englebert, and then she comes back as dishonest and not truthful because she's upset with her ex-husband. Don't keep putting that in a press release that we did a bunch of uh, lie detector tests. That is misleading. It is wrong. And shame, again, shame on them for putting that out there
It
and
makes
not
it sound like,
explaining that.
yeah,
Well,
it
yeah,
makes it sound like they actually had legitimate suspects that they found through a real
right.
trail of
Right,
evidence that
and
they,
witnesses. It makes it
right.
sound like they lie detected the clerk at the store, and they hit up a bunch of guys that reached the description of the gentleman that the clerk at the store said that he saw Chance speaking to. They went out and tried to identify who these two girls were that you saw, and interviewed them, anyone meeting those descriptions, because as Sean and I have discussed on this podcast, there's probably not too many people in that town that meet the description of those two young ladies based on the eyewitness description of them. So yeah, it's so misleading, and I'm so glad that you've cleared that up, because that did stand out to me, that they sort of like they listed, like the work that they had done in that press release. And part of it was that. And I wondered, we always try to give everybody the benefit of the doubt here. I mean, Sean and I are not in the business of questioning law enforcement. Like that's not why we do this, right? We try to interview as many cops as we can who are involved in these cases. But, it just seemed very, very strange. And the fact that they didn't face the cameras. I mean, when this is like the biggest story that's happened in this place, and it's been going on for so long, wouldn't you want to put someone there and let the public see them and have body language and just show a face to the statement that you're making and say, this is why we've come to this conclusion, and we really want everyone to have closure, and we're sorry that this isn't what a lot of people might have expected. Like, get ahead of it.
Yeah, they should be able to answer all the questions too. I mean, there are very obvious questions, and they got to know people are going to have them. And so, if you're going
Right.
to come out and tell us, here's the conclusion, you better be able to show your work. When people
Well,
say, "Okay,
that's the
why do you
thing,
think
right?
that?"
Yeah, like we're all saying, like, okay, so this now, and Ryan, you said it so passionately and eloquently, but I think that's the crux of this whole thing for me right now, is that the official story that they had always said was that he was in the river and that it was natural, the elements and the storm, and now all of a sudden he's found over here. And just like that, as soon as the forensics come back that it's him, it's like, oh, we got a whole different story, and that's what happened. It's like, how did you come to that conclusion? Like, during that month, I don't know, what was it, 6 weeks to identify the remains? During that time, you conducted a new investigation and figured out that, lo and behold, he actually decided to take this, like, I hate to say this, but like self-harming route. I don't want to say the S word because we'll get banned on YouTube and no one will see this video. But he took this route like with intentional self-harm in mind, because that's the only thing that makes sense to me. Like, how does he get up on top of this thing and fall down unless, as you said, he's coerced? And I'm assuming, and I know you might not be able to speak directly to what you actually think happened now, but I'm assuming what you're saying is that he was alive when he got there, because a lot of people are speculating that maybe the remains were moved. But I think what you're saying, as far as the details that you've given us, as far as the state of the remains, I think that's probably not the case. It sounds like he was probably alive when he got there, and ended up there, you know, that, that at the time that he got there, and it wasn't his remains weren't moved to that place. But
Right. And I want to be clear. Since Chance has been found, I have not been there. I can't speak to exactly how the terrain looks, but what I can tell you is I have been in communication with some really, really great people who are locals, and people who are not locals who have done a lot of research on that area. Um, and we do have some actual footage and actual photographs from some people who have been on scene. And it just made it even more complicated and confusing why he would be there. What made him go off trail in that area and come to the conclusion of what happened to him? It just doesn't make sense. Um, Again, we know that he was leaving Torrington because I'm sorry, he was leaving Gering and Scottsbluff area because he was trying to get away from somebody. The evidence shows that he was continuing to try to get away from somebody. And him being off trail, him being off road continues. If you continue to follow the evidence, he was trying to get away from somebody. Somebody, we know people were out looking for him that night. How many? We don't know, because you ask anybody who was out looking that night, you'll get a different answer every time. It's very frustrating. It's very, yeah. And I will tell you, I'm upset. I'm appear passionate about this right now, and the reason is I submitted my FOIA request as soon as I was able to. I submitted my FOIA request, Freedom of Information Act. I submitted it by mail. I know from some people, some good people who did really well and submitted their FOIA requests before me, they got instant denial. Instant. Nope, you're not getting anything. You can appeal it. Good luck. Absolutely disgusting. That tells me that their denial was crafted and drawn up and written up before they even came out with the conclusion of what happened to Chance. That's the evidence of it. Nobody just all of a sudden comes up with, here's why we're going to deny it. There was a lot of research put into that FOIA request. I mean, that FOIA denial.
Well, and if you think again, returning to the press release about what they said versus what they left out, right? They're really happy to talk about this completely almost irrelevant lie detector test. But what they're not telling us is, and they're telling us, okay, well, Chance was partially, identified through his belongings, but they're not telling us about the pieces that are missing, which are huge. I mean, to have a person die under mysterious circumstances and suddenly their wallet and their prized possession are missing.
right.
Yeah.
Tell me why. And if this person fell down a ravine or off of a cliff, okay, I can understand how maybe your phone might go flying, right? Your wallet might come out of your pants, but it wouldn't be just vanished into thin air. And then also, how does your belt buckle come off, but your belt stays on? Doubly suspicious when it's a valuable belt buckle and people know that it's valuable to you and it means something. It's a sort of a trophy. And again, okay, maybe it does come off. Maybe that happens. Where is it? In this vicinity
Right.
somewhere, right? You've got people crawling all over this, forensically investigating it, and no one digs it up. I think it's a little hard to believe. In the absence of that information being released to the public with this conclusion to me is, I struggle to find the proper adjective for it, but it feels a little intentional.
Yep. Ryan, the land that he was found on, several people have said that it's actually under federal jurisdiction. Is that true as far as you know?
It is. It's a national park area, so it does fall under federal jurisdiction. Um, However, the local law enforcement, if they have an active case involving, if they have jurisdiction over an active case or a missing persons case from their area, the federal system is very good about not trying to trump over or trump the investigation. They will allow local law enforcement to do their job.
But is there any world where the federal authorities, and I'm asking you as an expert on this, I'm not asking you if this is something that you and the Dawn side of the family are thinking of doing, but is there any way to sort of solicit the federal authorities to try and take a look at this, um, because of this weird conclusion that the local authorities have come to?
Yes, I'm sorry, Dawn and Everett and Grandma Linda, they have reached out to federal authorities and they have spoke to them. And there was some federal authorities on site. So by speaking with them, of course they're going to refer back to Gering PD and speak to them about their investigation. But what they are able to talk about, they did look into it, and they pretty much concluded that they agree with Gering Police Department's conclusion on it.
What's the best thing to do right now, and what do you guys plan to do moving forward?
So, real quick before I discuss our plans for moving forward, what I do want to say is when Chance's family, his parents and his grandmother have called certain people, they have always answered the phone and they've always given their time to speak to them and provide the evidence as to why they came to the conclusion. Although Don Everett and Grandma Linda don't necessarily agree with their conclusion, they've always answered the phone. I'm not going to identify the person, but there's an elected official in the Scottsbluff County area, and he has been just simply amazing with answering the phone every time Don calls him. In fact, I spoke to this person a year ago, and it was just amazing to me that he spent 20 minutes with me on the phone. And like I said, he doesn't owe me anything. I'm not even a member of Scottsbluff County, but he was very open to me. Didn't reveal any evidence that could hinder the investigation. And then what I really liked about this person was he asked me my opinion of what I thought happened. And as soon as he did that and I gave my opinion, I thought, I wish this other law enforcement agency would be willing to hear some people's opinions. I know they have. I know they've been sent down a lot of rabbit holes, but unfortunately, that's part of being law enforcement. As a private investigator, I've been out to I've been out to reservations. I've been all over Wyoming. I've been all over South Dakota looking for Chance based on people saying, I'm telling you the truth. This is where he's at. This is what happened. That's just something you have to do. You can't just get a phone call and get some information and not follow up on it. So now back to what our plans are for the future. I'm waiting for my FOIA request to come back. It's going to be a denial. Then, of course, we'll go into immediate appeal. I think they're waiting for the appeal, so we'll get the appeal. And then right now, being wintertime in the Nebraska area, it's not the best time to be out there looking around. But this is no secret. We are going to coordinate with the Park Service. We're going to coordinate with Gering Police Department, the family is, and see if they will take a group of us out there to look at the area and explain to us why they think something happened. So we're going to reach out and we're going to make that happen next spring or next summer. Of course, we're not going to broadcast it to everybody because not trying to be rude, but we don't want people there that probably shouldn't be there. You've seen over the last 6 years, there's been a lot of issues and concerns with people that have come forward saying, I know exactly what happened to Chance, and they may have even sabotaged evidence because they didn't have the skills or the training to properly investigate or interview people. And it takes a while to get somebody to speak to you that's been harassed and hammered by somebody or had their home broke into because somebody believes that there's evidence of Chance missing in that home. It's hard to get those people to come forward and talk to you after suffering through something like that. So we're going to get out there. We're going to see the area. After we see the area, whether Dawn and Linda and Everett want to be there. If they don't want to be there, of course, I'll give them a really good briefing of what's going on. I'm going to be going out there as a concerned citizen and a couple people in the area that have really worked well at helping Dawn see the area and look at the area. Hopefully they'll be there also. And then we'll come to a conclusion of if we should move forward. And if we do move forward, what's the best route? Tell you right now, another thing that's not a secret is we are most likely going to request a grand jury investigation. we would really like to have 7 to 12 people come to a conclusion. Citizens of the county that can look at the evidence, not just look at cherry-picked evidence, look at the totality of everything. Allow everyone to come forward and tell them what they saw that night, what happened that night, so we can get a group of dedicated citizens to come to a conclusion also. That would be really nice to have.
Now, if there was a grand jury, would it only cover the stuff that the Gering PD has looked at, or would they be able to look at other witnesses that haven't necessarily been followed up on? Because it does seem like there's so much work that you've done that just hasn't been followed up on.
They would not just see the evidence that supports a conclusion. They would get the totality of everything. Even myself, I would be allowed to testify in front of the grand jury investigation. Of course, it'll be closed door, which I prefer, and then they can ask questions of me. They can even hear some hearsay evidence. However, the hearsay evidence would lead them to additional witnesses that they could pull forward or speak with regarding what happened that night. And one other thing I want to add, when I first talked to Dawn over 2 years ago, and we had our conversation, and I asked her if I could look into her son's disappearance. At the very end of the conversation, as we were parting, and she was walking to her vehicle and I was walking to mine, and Dawn said, "Ryan, let me know if I owe somebody an apology when you're done." That told me right there, she is not going to be closed-minded. She's not full of hate and discontent. She's full of hurt because she doesn't know where her son was at the time. She doesn't know what happened to him, but she wants to know, do I owe somebody an apology? Do I not owe somebody an apology? I need to know, because that's eating at her. Not the pain and suffering necessarily of losing her son, but has all this drama and has all these issues and hateful speech that's been directed at Dawn and Everett and other people. Does she owe an apology for that? And that just made it know that I wanted to work with Dawn, and I wanted to try to do the best I can and work with her friends and other private investigators and find out what happened to her son that night. So I can't speak for Dawn and Everett on this, but I think they would really like to see the conclusion of a grand jury investigation. And again, it's not a secret that more than likely we're going to request one, hopefully by next year.
There's no answer for that question that she asked you yet, right? As far as if she owes an apology to anybody.
No. And I have my own opinions on that. When somebody has evidence, and it's evidence that a private investigator or a citizen says, "Hey, if we could really look at this, it would solve a lot of issues, and it would put some rumors to rest." And the keeper of that information says, "Nope, I'm not going to show you because I don't think I owe it to you." That in itself doesn't warrant an apology. Again, nobody owes me anything. But if you're the keeper of evidence and you're the keeper of information, and you send out a group text and you say, "Everybody that has this better not show the Engelbert's private investigator," that right there shows hate, and you're withholding evidence that can clear up a bunch of rumors simply because you're mad or you're upset. And that just kind of irks me a little bit, because it's like we could have put a lot of rumors to rest. We could have moved away from a lot of hateful speech out there simply by giving somebody 30 minutes of your time, and it never happened. I want to be clear. Although the public, myself and other people, are disappointed with the press release, unfortunately, law enforcement needs to expect that there's going to be some disappointment. I can't believe that they would put out a press release like that and not expect a bunch of pushback and not a lot of doubt in the conclusion of their investigation. Whether we submit a criminal case to the prosecutors, and prosecutors come back and say, "Hey, we can't prosecute this case." Yeah, there's always disappointment, but you have to expect that. I am thankful that law enforcement answers the phone when the family calls. especially the local elected official in that county that answers the phone. That's golden. I can't tell you how much a 20-minute, 30-minute phone call can mean to somebody. Um, but law enforcement, uh, county attorneys, everybody, don't take it personal. Um, when we submit FOIA requests and we submit appeals, don't take it personal when we ask for a grand jury investigation. That's part of what happens. If you take it personal, you're going to let your emotions affect your investigation. That's all I can say. Just, it's going to happen. Let a grand jury come to a conclusion if we request the grand jury investigation.
One quick browse through our comment section on any of our chance coverage will tell you that the vast majority of people concerned with this case are not satisfied with the answer that we're being given right now. So it isn't just the three people on this call who have these questions. It's a lot of people.
It's a lot of people. Yeah, definitely.
Absolutely. Friends and family of Chance, people who have come to know Chance over the last 6 years, and the citizens of that county and the citizens of the close, hardworking community where Chance is from, they want answers and they want to see why they came to that conclusion. And it is trouble. It does raise red flags when somebody comes to a conclusion without showing the evidence, and when you have FOIA or Freedom of Information Act denials, which appear to be pre-prepared before the press release came out. I mean, if you're working on a press release and you're working on the denial for a FOIA request at the same time, whoa, you better check yourself. That, and you wonder why people are coming up with conspiracy theories? You brought that upon yourself, buddy. I'm sorry. That is absurd.
Well, that's
Agreed.
the thing. Yeah, it doesn't lend itself to public trust, right? The way that this is being sort of handled does not lend itself to public trust in any of the people involved. When you won't answer questions, when you have kind of preposterous conclusions and you refuse to explain how you arrived there, um, why, how, in what world does that make people want to trust you more as opposed to start to be suspicious? And then the extreme of suspicion turns into conspiracy theories. So
Yeah.
yeah, you're absolutely right. I mean, who do we have to blame for that? It's not us. It's not Don. It's the way it's handled, frankly.
Ryan, obviously, we're here anytime that you want a platform. Same obviously goes for Dawn. I would imagine she's not in a state where she wants to talk publicly to anybody right now. But we're always here for you guys, and we're going to do everything we can on our end to keep this alive and just keep putting Chance's name out there and reporting on this case. And we'll stay close with you. And yeah, thank you so much for coming on with us today and speaking directly to our listeners and telling us what's going on. Because I think it's really, really important that they hear it directly from someone who's been so closely involved with the case.
Yes. So of course the good news is Chance has been found. He's been identified. Now, now we're going into another long distance marathon of trying to find out why he was there and what happened to him. And you all and a lot of other people that have helped out, it's been very much appreciated. We got to keep his story alive. We've got to keep it out there. There's a lot of people who have dedicated a lot of time to this, a lot of local people from the area, a lot of people from his hometown, his best friend who spent weeks on end searching for him. Um, yeah, it's just a lot of people have dedicated their time to this and they want an explanation, and I think they deserve an explanation.
Right
I
on.
think I
Well,
think Chance deserves it.
Oh, you said it. You said it way better than I ever could have. Chance deserves for his family to know what happened to him. Absolutely.
well, thank you for being forthcoming with everything and being willing to come on here and talk, even though, like you said, you're probably going to get some blowback from people who disagree. But I think it shows a lot of integrity to be willing to come on and speak and just be honest, And I think that's what's missing with a lot of this story. So for your part, you're doing it, and we really appreciate it, man. And like Myles said, we're always here whenever you guys need to come on and talk about anything.
You got it. Much appreciated. Thank you.
Thanks,
Thank
brother.
you. All right, we'll stay
See
in
you
touch.
soon.
You got it.
I don't know if there's much to say right now, between you and me after that conversation. I mean, it's kind of like, I mean, you could feel his intensity. I mean, they're obviously not accepting this conclusion. I think that's quite obvious. And I think, this isn't the last that we've heard from Dawn's side of the family and from the people that are working with her. And as Ryan said, we've got to keep saying Chance's name and we got to try to keep the story alive for their sake. And until there's real answers, I think it's fair for us to keep talking about this. Because there's just too many questions around it, and there's too many people who aren't accepting this weird little press release and like that's it. That's the end of it. It just doesn't seem right.
Well, yeah, and I have seen one or two comments where people are like, "Drop it," just for like, why, why even continue to talk about this? That's so
Yeah.
obvious. Well, that's not how Chance's family feels.
Yeah. And
So,
listen, maybe some of those folks are watching this. Maybe you guys feel different after hearing Ryan talk. I mean, this is a guy who's been living with this case for a long time. He's done a lot of work. He's interviewed a lot of people. He's been on the ground. And maybe after hearing this, maybe you guys feel differently. Drop us a comment. Let us know. Do you still think we should back off and stop talking about this, or has listening to Ryan's update changed your mind on that?
well, yeah, and I mean, I would just, not to rank the relevance of people's opinions here, but frankly, people who never knew Chance and aren't involved, their opinion is fine for them, but the ones that really counts here is his family who doesn't feel like they have closure. And so for Myles and I, that's kind of where our concern leads. If they feel there's value in talking about it and there's things that don't make sense, which obviously there are, then sure, we'll continue to revisit it. Not every week, not even every month, but as news develops and things become important, we've been on it, a lot the last 2 or 3 weeks because there's been a ton of developments, one after the other, and that's why we're doing this. I think after talking to Ryan, we probably won't hear much about this case on this channel for a little bit. But I am haunted particularly by what was missing from Chance, right? The wallet and the belt buckle. I can't make that make sense. I know we already talked about it, so we don't have to go over it. But everybody who says this makes perfect sense and leave it alone, I'd like to know what you think about that. Because
Well,
to
he was,
me,
there's a couple of things around that Ryan mentioned, details that we now know from speaking to him. The Chance's body was face down. So if he fell face down and the belt buckle's not there, and it's not like if it came off during the fall, like it would be under him, right? Like it would be there because everything was there, right?
well, if his
You know what
phone
I'm
was
saying?
with him, yeah, how
Yeah.
far could the belt
Uh,
buckle go on? Yeah.
so that's very strange. There was something that you said when we were on with Ryan, where you mentioned the word trophy. And that really, really hit me hard that because I started just getting visuals of what may have happened that night. And this with now knowing what we know and knowing that like, probably wasn't moved there. He did end up there that night. What was Chance dealing with and what happened before he ended up face down at the bottom of that monument?
Guys, let us know what you think in the comments. As always, Myles and I have our opinions on this case at this point because we've covered it so much. But really, this was about platforming Ryan and hearing what he had to say. We were eager to talk to him, and we had our questions. But I was so interested in everything that he had to tell us. So, what do you think about it? Let us know if you like what we're doing here. As usual, don't forget to subscribe.
Thanks, everybody.